The sky above the moon was always gray. Clouds drifted like silent ghosts across a dim silver sky. The wind moved gently through the dry grass of the graveyard. It carried the scent of old stone and burnt. Aviril stepped down from the small landing. Skiff, she didn't speak. Her long cloak swayed with every step. Her fingers held a small bundle close to her chest. Inside was the last thing her child had touched, a soft fabric toy. Made from Kalari silk, she walked between the tall grave markers. Each one carved with human letters, some names she couldn't pronounce. Others were faded. All of them stood in silence. This moon was where they said her child had died. The final evacuation during the collapse of Outpost 9. The humans called it a reactor breach. Her people called it a disaster they were never meant to survive. But Varel remembered the scream of the sirens, the fire, the smoke, and the moment she lost grip of her child's tiny hand. They told her the child didn't make it. A brave human had tried to carry him out, but failed. The body was never recovered. Only remains. She was told the humans buried him here. With respect, with care. Now she was here. To mourn, to say goodbye. Reached the grave at the far end of the field. It stood alone, set apart from the others. Stone was clean. Recently placed. Too recently. She knelt slowly, placing the toy at the base of the stone. Her hands trembled as she traced the human letters carved into it. There was her child's name spelled in English, followed by a human phrase: lost in fire, honored in memory. She bowed her head. Her voice broke as she whispered in her own language, a mother's prayer, a song for safe travels, a farewell. But something felt wrong. She looked at the ground. The dirt around the grave was still soft. Not aged, not weathered like the others nearby. There were no signs of rain damage, no signs of time. She tilted her head. Her senses sharpened. Her people could feel life in the soil, and this soil felt quiet, too quiet. She reached forward, pressed her palm to the earth. She felt no bones, no ashes, no remains. Her breath caught. Her heart began to race. She stood up quickly. Looking around, then she saw a small patch of grass near the edge of the grave was burned, but not by fire. It was marked deliberately. Something had been written there. She stepped closer, knelt again, and read the human words etched into the ground: not dead. 2 words, etched with something hot, maybe a laser, but carved with care. Her fingers trembled as she reached out. She touched the scorched letters. Still warm, she looked up. The fog had grown thicker. Now shadows moved in the distance. Figures maybe, or tricks of the light. But she felt it. She was not alone. Someone was watching. She stood slowly. Her eyes scanned the horizon. She called out. No answer. The fog swirled, then cleared just enough. In the distance, near the tree line, a tall figure stood still. Not Kalari. Too broad, too solid. A human. She stepped forward. The figure stepped back. She called out again, this time in English. Did you write this? No reply, but the figure turned, walked away slowly, disappeared into the mist. She took 1 step forward, then stopped. The ground near the grave shifted. Something metal glinted beneath the soil. She knelt again, brushed it clear. A human dog tag. Name scratched off, but on the back, another message: he is safe. Her hands tightened around it. Tears welled up again, but this time they were different. She looked up toward the path. The figure had taken hope. It was still alive. She turned back to the grave, took the toy from the base of the stone, held it close once more. This was not the end. This was the beginning. Her child was not dead, and someone, some human, had saved him. She rose, stepped back toward her skiff, eyes on the trail. Ahead the wind shifted, and behind her, the grass around the grave moved gently, as if breathing. The mist followed her as she left. But now it felt less like a shroud and more like a veil waiting to be lifted. The stars outside the window pulsed in silence, cold and distant. Uncaring Captain Elias Rayner sat alone in the pilot's seat of his ship. The cabin was dim. Only the soft blinking of old control lights kept the shadows away. He hadn't slept in days. Not real sleep, not the kind that lets a man rest. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. He reached for the flask in his coat pocket, then paused. Instead of drinking, he turned the pilot seat around and looked behind him. There it was, the stasis pod sealed. Tight covered in blankets and cables, quiet. But not empty inside was a small Kalari child, eyes closed. Chest rising, slow and steady, still alive. Rainer walked over to the pod. He placed his hand gently on the glass, warm to the touch he had repaired. The heating system himself, with parts he stole from a derelict mining station. He'd done a lot of stealing lately. Had called it a failed mission. They said no survivors. He was ordered to pull back when the fires started, when the reactor began to melt down, but he stayed. He heard the cries. He saw the small figure crawling through the smoke. And he couldn't turn away. That wasn't in the manual, but it was in him. He had carried the child through a broken hallway, shielded him with his body. When the ceiling collapsed, fought off looters, watched his shuttle burn. And still somehow he survived. He patched the child up with a medic drone. Then he disappeared. Now he was a ghost hunted, labeled a traitor by his own command. They said he stole alien property. They said he broke protocol. They didn't care that the child was alive. They only cared that someone like him refused to follow orders. He leaned against the wall, closed his eyes. The child had spoken once, just before the pod sealed. Spoke one word in soft Kalaramatha. Rainer had no answer, only silence. He didn't know the child's name, didn't know who the mother was, only knew she had long white robes, a soft voice, eyes full of fear. He remembered her reaching out, screaming. As the doors closed, then gone in the smoke, Rainer turned back to the pod. He pressed a few buttons, ran a check, vitals stable, body temperature normal, but something new appeared on the screen. Brain activity had increased. The child was dreaming, moving. Rainer leaned closer. He saw the child's fingers twitch, then the small lips moved again. One word, mother. Rainer stepped back, heart pounding. Someone was still connected somewhere. That connection had not been broken. He turned toward the control panel, typed in a signal burst, encrypted, short range. He didn't expect it to reach anyone, but he had to try. Just one message. He typed, your child lives. Come find me, coordinates soon. He didn't sign his name, didn't need to. Then behind him the pod beeped softly. Child opened his eyes, bright, unblinking. Rainer stepped closer. He knelt down beside the pod. The child looked at him, didn't speak, but didn't cry either. Then the child reached one tiny hand to the glass and placed it there. Rainer stared at that hand. Then slowly he placed his own against the glass, palm to palm, a silent promise. I won't let anything take you. Suddenly, the sensors beeped again. Someone was scanning them from a distance, a silent ping, unmarked ship. No ID. Rainer stood fast, rushed to the controls, activated the cloaking shield, turned off the external heat signature. He watched the radar. The signal moved, then paused, then vanished. They were looking for him. He looked out the window, saw only stars again. He knew this couldn't last. He couldn't run forever, but he wasn't ready to give up either. He walked back to the pod, sat beside it. The child had fallen asleep again. Peaceful now. Rainer whispered, I don't care what they call me, coward, traitor, thief. I didn't save you because of orders. I saved you because no one else would, and now I'll get you home somehow. Some way. He didn't know who the mother was, didn't know if she still lived, but in his heart, he hoped that she felt something, a pull, a whisper, because he had felt it too. From the moment he carried that child through fire, something had changed in him, something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. And now, he wasn't just running, he was waiting for the mother to come, waiting for the stars to give him one chance to do the right thing, even if it meant dying for it. But not today. Today the child was safe, and that was enough. Varel stood at the edge of the crash site. A cold wind blew across the ruined field. Metal fragments glinted under the pale light. Ashes of a story no one wanted to tell. She stepped carefully over burned soil and shattered glass. The air still carried the smell of melted circuits and scorched wiring. Nothing here had healed. Just like her, it had taken her weeks to get here. Every question she asked was met with silence or lies. Every hallway she walked down was watched. But she kept going now. She stood where her child was supposed to have died. But the grave had been empty, and the words burned into the earth, still haunted her, not dead. Her heart told her it was true, and now she needed proof. She moved deeper into the wreckage. Every step echoed Like a memory, she saw the blackened skeleton of a transport shuttle. The outer frame collapsed inward. The inside looked like a furnace had eaten it. But there, in the corner, she saw something small, a child's bracelet. She knelt, lifted it gently from the ash. Her breath caught in her throat. This was real. She had made this herself, woven from soft red threads and Kalari feathers. It had been around her child's wrist the day they were separated. Tears formed in her eyes, but not from grief this time, from hope. Someone had carried the child away from here, through fire, through chaos. She heard movement behind her. She turned fast, hand reaching for the small stun device hidden under her cloak. An old human soldier stood leaning against a broken wing, one leg bandaged, one eye covered in gauze. He looked tired, like someone who had lived through too many wars, but his voice was calm. "You're looking for the kid, aren't you?" Varel didn't answer right away. She didn't have to. He nodded slowly. "Spat into the dirt. I saw him, or someone carrying him. Tall man, rugged armor, human. Could barely walk but held the kid close like his life depended on it." Varel stepped forward. Her voice shook. "Did the child survive?" The soldier didn't speak at first. Then he looked up, his voice softer. "Now I think so. I think that man did something none of us had the courage to do. He disappeared before the med ships came, took a stolen pod, and vanished into the dark." Viral's hands tightened around the bracelet. She had a name now, a direction. She asked the Mando, "You know where he went?" The soldier shook his head. "No, but he left something behind." He reached into his coat, pulled out a small recording device, damaged but still blinking. "Found it near the escape route. I couldn't play it, too encrypted. Maybe you can." He handed it to her, turned away, and limped off without another word. Virel stood alone again, holding the device. She tapped the side. The screen flickered. Then a voice crackled to life, rough, human, but familiar somehow. "This is Captain Elias Rayner. To whoever finds this, the child is alive, safe for now. They'll come after me, but I won't let them take him. Not without a fight." To his mother, "If you hear this, he calls for you in his sleep. Every single night." Then silence. Varel pressed the recorder to her chest. A sob escaped her lips, not of pain but of confirmation. Her child was alive. And this human Elias had risked everything to save him. She stood up, straightened her cloak, and looked to the sky. Somewhere out there, he was running, hiding, fighting to keep her child alive. She would find him, even if she had to tear the stars apart to do it. Back on Elias Rayner's ship, the child stirred in the pod. His small fingers moved, his eyes fluttered open. He looked around, eyes wide and calm. Then a soft whisper left his lips. "Mama." The voice carried no sound. But in the distance, across space, Varel felt a sudden rush through her heart, a warmth that melted her fear. She didn't know how, but she knew he was calling, and she would answer in the silence of her ship. She powered up the engines, set her course for the outer colonies. She didn't trust humans, but this one, Captain Elias Rayner, was different. She had felt something strange when she heard his voice, not just gratitude, something else. It scared her. But she didn't run from fear anymore. The stars had taken her child once. Now they would guide her back to him, and maybe, just maybe, to something more. The mining colony of Lorvan 5 spun slowly in orbit around a dying red star. The air was thick with dust, the skies forever dim, but for fugitives like Captain Elias Rayner, it was the last place anyone would think to look. He had landed quietly. No transmission, no logs, just a silent glide into a forgotten hangar below the old refinery stacks. Now he sat in a rusted metal room, wires exposed, walls humming. The stasis pod beside him kept a gentle pulse. The child inside still asleep, still alive. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. His hands ached. His shoulder was wrapped in cloth, still healing from a recent gunshot. They had found him on Bayar Station. Tried to take the child, tried to kill him, but they didn't expect him to fight like a man with something to lose. He looked down at the pod, at the small face resting in peace, and he knew he would fight again and again for this little life. The old terminal on the wall crackled to life. A warning blinked. Long-range scan detected unknown ship approaching. His breath caught. They had tracked him again, too fast this time, too precise. Not bounty hunters, something worse. He opened the panel, pulled out the emergency drive core. If they boarded, he wouldn't let them take anything. He grabbed the pod handles, started the manual lift, moved through the back corridors of the station. Dust falling from the ceiling, pipes leaking steam, every sound felt louder. Every shadow looked like a trap. He had learned to trust his instincts, and they screamed at him, now move outside. The unknown ship was landing, sleek, silent, military, not human. Not Calera private security, paid by someone powerful, someone who wanted the child for a reason. Elias still didn't understand. He reached the launch bay. An old shuttle sat in the dark, half working, but maybe enough. He placed the pod inside, strapped it tight, then sealed the hatch. Footsteps echoed behind him. He turned fast, weapon ready, breath sharp, but the figure that stepped out of the fog wasn't an enemy. It was her. Varelish walked slow, arms raised, her voice calm. "I'm not here to take him. I'm here because he called me." Elias didn't lower the weapon. Not yet. His voice was rough. "How did you find Mesh?" Stepped closer, eyes never leaving his. "He left a message. And I felt something real, a bond that couldn't be broken." The pod inside the shuttle beeped softly. The child stirred. Viral turned her head. Tears welled in her eyes. Her voice broke. They heard his voice in my dreams for weeks. He still remembers me." Elias nodded slowly, still cautious, still wounded from everything he had seen. But he didn't stop her when she stepped forward, didn't stop her when she placed her hand on the glass, didn't stop her when the child's hand lifted. In return, for a moment, everything stood still. Then a distant sound, metal boots, weapons charging. Elias turned, eyes wide. "They're here." He moved fast, climbed into the pilot's seat. Varel took the co-pilot side without hesitation. "You can fly?" he asked. She didn't answer. She just activated the engines. The door burst open behind them. Blaster fire cut through the dark. Sparks flew. The shuttle launched out of the hangar, through a tunnel of smoke, up into the poisoned sky. Elias pulled hard on the controls. The shuttle shook, alarms screamed. They climbed into the upper atmosphere. Viral worked fast, cleared debris from the intake, rerouted the power core. He glanced at her. She looked like someone who had been running just as long as he had behind them. The enemy ship gave chase fast, deadly, locked on, but Elias had one more trick. He hit a hidden switch. The back hatch blew open. Scrap metal and broken crates scattered like a cloud. The tracker missile hit. The decoy explosion lit up the sky. The shockwave pushed them off course, but a live silence returned. The shuttle drifted, bruised, but flying. Elias leaned back, breathing hard. "You followed me, even when everyone else gave up," he said. Varel looked at him, her voice low. "You saved what was most precious to me, even when you had no reason to." They sat there, no more words, just understanding, a bond forged in loss, in fire, in survival. The child slept again, safe between them. For now they had escaped, but the chase was far from over. Viral looked out the window into the dark. "They won't stop, not until they take him." Elias nodded. "Then we don't stop either. We run, we fight together." The stars ahead were endless, but so was their will. The stars outside the viewport moved slowly. Now the chase was over, for the moment. Shuttle had docked on a quiet medical satellite in the outer belt, old, empty, left behind after the Warno weapons. No cameras, just silence inside the docking bay. Captain Elias Rayner stood leaning against the wall. His side ached. His head throbbed, but his eyes stayed locked on the pod. He hadn't opened it yet. Not since the escape. The child was stable, sleeping alive across from him. Varel stood, quiet hands clasped, eyes full of both hope and fear. She wanted to hold him, to touch his skin, to hear his voice, but something held her back. She looked at Elias. This man, this human, had risked everything. He had no reason to save her child, no duty, no reward. She asked him softly, "Why did you keep him safe? Why not hand him over, or leave him behind?" Elias didn't answer right away. He looked down, jaw tight, voice low. "Because I couldn't lose another one." Arel tilted her head. "Another child?" Elias nodded slowly, his voice cracked. "My own son. He died in a hospital bed during the first wave, while I was deployed. While I followed orders, I wasn't there. I didn't get to say goodbye, so when I saw your boy in that fire reaching out, crying, I swore I wouldn't fail this." Time, even if he wasn't mine. Even if I had to burn for it. Varel's eyes softened, her breath caught. She stepped closer, not out of pity, but understanding. Pain had shaped them. Both loss had carved their hearts the same way. She reached out, touched his shoulder gently. Thank you for not letting him go. Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, he saw more than just an alien mother. He saw someone who had loved, lost, survived. Someone who had strength in her sorrow and light. In her eyes he nodded. It's time. They turned to the pod. Elias entered the code. The seals hissed. The lid lifted slowly. A soft breath escaped the pod. Then a small sound. The child opened his eyes. He blinked, confused. Then his gaze fell on Varela. She dropped to her knees, hands trembling, tears flowing freely. My little one, she whispered. It's me, I'm here. The child stared. Then his lips moved. Mama. His voice was hoarse, quiet, but full of recognition. Viral broke. She reached into the pod, lifted him into her arms, held him close against her chest. He clung to her, wrapped his arms around her neck, breathed in her scent, and smiled. Elias watched, silent, moved. He had dreamed of this moment, but seeing it, feeling it in the room, it was more than he imagined. Warmth, the peace, the healing. After everything, this child had survived not because of power or orders, but because of love. Irel looked at Elias, still holding her child. She whispered, he remembers you too. The child looked at Elias, then reached out one hand. Elias stepped forward, kneeling beside them. He placed his hand against the child's mouth, fingers wrapped around his soft, warm, thank you, the child said softly in perfect English. Elias smiled, eyes wet. You are stronger than anyone I've ever met. Varel held her child close, but her eyes stayed on Elias. You gave me back my world, she said. I don't know how to repay that. Elias shook his head. You don't have to. He's safe, that's enough. But Varel didn't look away. It's not just that you stayed when everyone else ran. You listened to his voice when I couldn't reach him. You carried his pain with you. You became part of his story and mine. There was silence between them, not awkward, but deep, full of something new. Not just grief, not just thanks, something else. A connection. Vil stood slowly, her child still in her arms. She turned toward the exit. We can't stay here long. They'll come again. Elias nodded. I know a place off-grid, old colony. No one remembers. We can hide there. For a while Varel looked at him. Then we go together. She paused, then said quietly, you saved my child, and I won't leave you behind now. Elias looked down, then back up at her. Then I guess we run as three. They walked together down the corridor, side by side, the child between them. The lights flickered. The engines hummed. The galaxy was still dangerous, still full of hunters, still ruled by fear, but now they had something stronger. A bond formed by fire, a family shaped by fate, and a future waiting to be written. The hidden colony floated like a shadow near a shattered asteroid belt, once a thriving research station, now a forgotten shell. No beacons, no patrols, only silence, perfect for hiding. Elias Rayner stood by the viewport, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the 5A stars behind him. Varel moved quietly. She carried a tray of warm food for the child, for herself, and for him. The child sat between them now, his strength returning, his voice clearer, his smile brighter. But something had changed. He had started speaking words in both human and Kalari language, without learning, without being taught. One moment, he spoke in English, the next in Kalari dialects only royal bloodlines used. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and sometimes he whispered things he couldn't possibly know. Elias had noticed, Varel had too, but neither of them spoke it aloud until today. The child had drawn something on the floor, with chalk, a shape, a star map, detailed, accurate, showing a sector deep in restricted space. When Elias saw it, his stomach dropped. That area was sealed, classified. It was where human scientists once experimented with gene fusion experiments that had been banned. Lost, erased from record. He turned to Varel, his voice firm. He's not just a child, is he for real? Hesitated, then nodded, her voice low. I never told the council, but during my pregnancy, there were anomalies, unexplained energy around him, fluctuations in my body. He was born 3 weeks early, but stronger than normal. Elias asked, did you ever come Into contact with human tech biological systems. Anything experimental, she shook her head. No, but my ship was boarded once. A human patrol scanned us. Said it was a mistake, then let us go. Elias looked at the map again. This isn't just random knowledge. This is military data, sealed coordinates, buried for a reason. Varel's hands trembled. She knelt beside the child, held his face gently. Tell me, how do you know these things? The child looked at her, calm, still smiling. They put it in me in the fire. Before the man came, I saw lights, heard voices. Then it all went quiet until I heard yours again. Elias backed away. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was a secret wrapped in blood. The child somehow carried both human and Kalari DNA, not just mixed but fused, stabilized, an impossible life. The first of its kind, a hybrid. Viral stood eyes wide, her voice shaking. Feel, come for him, not to save, to erase. Elias turned to the console, ran a system scan. The child had a beacon inside him, dormant but active now. Someone had triggered it. His hands flew across the controls. Too late. Multiple ships inbound. Not pirates, not bounty hunters, human destroyer class. And one Kalari elite cruiser. They were working together. Two enemies united by fear. Varel whispered, they see him as a threat. Elias nodded, or a weapon. We need to leave now. Now the child stood unafraid. He walked to the viewport, eyes glowing brighter. Let them come, he said softly. Viral knelt beside him. We won't let them take you. We will protect. Youth child turned to Elias, placed his hand on his chest. You already did. Now I protect you. Elias blinked, then nodded. He didn't know how, but he believed the child. They rushed to the lower deck, boarded the long-range escape ship, loaded what they could. Viral paused, looked back at the empty station. This was supposed to be safety. Elias said, safety isn't a place anymore. It's staying one step ahead. The engines roared to life. The ship lifted from the pad, just as the first blast hit the colony. The entire station exploded in flame, but they were already gone, flying into the stars. The child sat between them, his hands glowing faintly, and as the shockwave faded behind them, he whispered a new word. Foma. Viral looked at Elias. He looked back. They said nothing, but everything was understood. They would not run forever. They would not hide forever. Soon they would face the ones who feared the child. And when that day came, they wouldn't be alone. They would stand together. The stars looked closer from this world, not because the sky was different, but because everything felt quiet, safe. The hidden planet had no name, no signals, no satellites, just green valleys and glowing rivers. A place long forgotten by both humans and Kalari, a place where no one would come looking. For now Elias Rayner stood near a cliff edge, looking down at the forest below. The breeze moved through his hair. The wind was warm. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running behind him. Varel sat on a stone holding her child. His small hands played with a wooden figure Elias had carved. They had been here for 3 weeks. No chases, no alarms, no threats, just peace at night. They built fires, told stories, laughed, and slowly, something new began to grow. Not just trust, not just survival, but love, not rushed, not spoken in big words, but shown in the way Elias would carry the child when he fell asleep by the fire, or the way Varel would bring Elias food without asking, or the quiet moments when their hands would brush and neither pulled away. The child was changing too, growing faster than normal, smarter. His eyes sometimes showed glimpses of things he didn't say. He told them he dreamed of the stars, of ships chasing them. But he wasn't afraid. He always said the same thing after each dream: you re with me, so I'm safe. One night under the twin moons, Varel and Elias sat near the fire, the child asleep inside their small shelter. Varel looked at Elias, her voice quiet. Do you think they'll ever stop looking? Elias shook his head. No. But they'll stop finding. Viral stared at the flames. He's not just a child anymore. He's something new, a bridge or a threat, depending on who holds him. Elias looked at her, then at the stars. And let's make sure it's never them. Never the ones who see him as a tool. Viral reached out, took his hand. Then we protect him as a family. Elias looked at her, surprised, but not confused. He had felt it too long before either of them Said it out loud, family not by blood, but by bond, by pain, by survival and by choice. He nodded, family. The next morning, everything changed, a flash in the sky. A drop pod, fast, precise. Someone had found them. Elias grabbed his rifle. Varel pulled the child. Close they ran into the trees, not far, just enough to watch only. One man stepped out of the pod, unarmed, older, wearing a black coat with no markings. He looked around, then spoke loud enough for the wind to carry his voice. I am not here to fight, I am not here to harm the child. Elias stayed low, watching, waiting. The man looked toward the trees. You don't know me, but I know you, both of you, and the child. He's not a secret anymore. He's a symbol. Varel whispered. A trap, Elias whispered back. Maybe. Or maybe a chance. He stood slowly, gun at his side. He stepped out of the tree. See him listening, he said. The man smiled. You did something impossible. You saved what both our governments wanted destroyed, but now they can't hide it anymore. People have seen the child's data. Whispers are spreading. Some want war, but others, they want peace. Elias asked, and youth man answered, I want to give the child a future, free, protected, not locked in a lab. He handed Elias a small device, coordinates, a sanctuary, built in secret, for those who want peace more than power. No soldiers, no orders, only freedom. Elias didn't speak. He took the device, then stepped back into the trees. Later, around the fire, he handed it to Varel. What do you think? She looked at him. Think we've been running long enough. The child looked up. He smiled. I want to see more stars. Elias looked at Varel. She looked at him, and together, they made the decision not to run, but to move forward, to stop hiding in fear and start living in hope. As the ship rose from the planet's surface, the stars opened in front of them, endless, beautiful. The child sat between them, eyes wide, heart full. Varel placed her hand on Elias. No more graves, she whispered, only futures. Elias smiled, then leaned his head against hers, and for the first time he felt peace, not because the danger was gone, but because they would face it together, not as fugitives, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as a family forged in fire, bound by choice and guided by love.